Gregg Berhalter is by far the best candidate for the U.S. men's national team job for the next 4 years. At least that is what we can conclude if the reports are true and uh, they appear to be valid, and the official press release and announcement is later on today. Today is Sunday, June 16th. That's all we can kind of conclude. That Gregg Berhalter was by far and away the best candidate that the United States Soccer Federation interviewed. Of all the candidates that they interviewed, I don't know why I do this, because all this could be one or it could be like 20. But this is what they're telling us, is that by far and away, Berhalter is the best that they could get. Right? So all of the I'm still shocked from last night. Great win by the U.S. team over Mexico, 3-0. And the entire game, it was so odd that this news of Berhalter coming back leaked out shortly before the game. And it was this dark cloud hanging over what should have been a just fantastic night for U.S. soccer. And you should have seen the the fan shows afterwards. I watched probably 3 or 4 of them on YouTube last night before going to bed. And every single one, the tone of the shows were, you could just, you saw it in their faces. How big of a mistake does this whole thing look like with Crocker, United States Soccer Federation, Berhalter, everybody that was involved? McBride's out, Stewart's out. You think, okay, they're cleaning house. Things are going to get better. We've learned from our mistakes. And they take 6 months. They hire firms to come in to help with the going through the coaching candidates to come up with a list of people that fit into what is this new U.S. soccer culture that Berhalter is part of creating, that a lot of the players have spoken about in their interviews, that somebody needs to come in and fit within this culture to take us not necessarily to where we have been, but to build upon what we have done since 2018 with this very young core, very talented group of players, and take them to the next level, to what is arguably the most important World Cup for U.S. men's soccer in 2026, because it's coming here to the United States in 2026, and we will have a team with not only just a core, but almost an entire roster of talented players in their prime. This U.S. team should compete semifinals, quarterfinals is probably the target for what they're wanting to do for 2026. Realistic target. It's so hard to unpack how they have gotten to this decision, because again, what they're saying is Berhalter is by far and away so much better than everybody else that was interested in this job that they wanted, that they were going to pay whatever that amount was going to be. He was so much better than the other candidates that it's worth it to take along the baggage that is going to come week in and week out for the next 3 years, 3.5 years. All the baggage, all the same questions, all the problems that you're having with certain players, who, by the way, not to just single out Reyna, he's arguably one of your top most talented young players coming up right now. And not to say everything gets catered towards one player. You have to be a pretty special player for that to happen. But knowing that there are some issues with some of your top players, not with all of them, not with most of them. I know a lot of the players do like Berhalter, and that's fine. That's great. I'm glad that he has created a good relationship. He does seem to be a good mentor to a lot of these players. But all of the issues that he is carrying with him, you're saying he is by far and away the best candidate, that it's worth it to answer those questions week in, week out. You liked what you heard from him on where he wants to take the team and get them prepared for the next level over the next 3.5 years. I get it. All right. U.S. Soccer Federation and whoever was in charge of doing the hiring here is saying, we liked what you did with the team from 2018 to 2022. And I think most reasonable people can come to the conclusion that Gregg did a good job. I think the argument could be he either did a good job or a really good job with the team that he inherited back in, December of 2019 when he took over, after they failed to qualify for the last World Cup, the 2018 World Cup. So when you look at it, you're saying, okay, we like what he did with the team. I think everyone can acknowledge there were some shortcomings with, one, the way he handled not only the Reyna situation back in November and how that unfolded, and all that came about because of what he did at this leadership conference. He opened that box. It was an embarrassing mark for U.S. Soccer, but we're saying Berhalter is by far and away so much better than everybody else that wanted this job, that they interviewed legitimately, that you can overlook what happened there. And whatever issues going forward with Gio, he is by far and away the best candidate that we can get our hands on. You are also saying, of all the other candidates that you interviewed, he is by far and away the best candidate for the coaching job based off of the performance in the last World Cup, and the team did great. Number one, got to the World Cup. Number two, got out of group stage and were somewhat competitive against the Dutch. Completely outcoached. I think a lot of people can say that. He's just not on par with your better, more experienced European coaches. Can that be overcome? Is that a learning thing that can be acquired? Sure, it can, through experience, But so we're basically saying, okay, so we are willing to let him learn on the job with this group, with a very all-important World Cup coming up in 2026 here in the United States, that he was by far and away the best candidate that we had that wanted this job for the next 4 years. That we were willing to take on a coach that's not quite ready for the big teams, the big games. He is by far and away the best candidate we had. And I do think that we have to acknowledge, as US soccer fans, that although we keep saying this is our golden generation, this is a young, talented core group of players, we may be inflating a bit on how attractive this job could have been, would have been, is to these world-class coaches, the names who get thrown out there, who are probably never going to have any interest in coming over and taking this job for the next 4 years. Whether you're talking about Moreno, you're talking Pep, Chavez, whatever other names, international names that people were throwing out there, we had, a lot of us collectively, let's say, we're thinking, well, God, we should have our pick of coaches. We just have to make the money work. And I think that's a mistake on our part in thinking that our team, our players, this job going into World Cup 2026 here in the U.S. is that attractive of a job that people would want, that are of that stature. It just wasn't going to happen. So then we come back to, okay, so the pool of players, or I'm sorry, the pool of coaches that they took a look at, whether it was Marsh, and is Jesse Marsh that much better, the same, slightly worse than Berhalter? I'll let everybody else argue all that stuff. But personally, I think I would take a chance and roll the dice with even somebody that is on par with Berhalter as a coach, just to get a different voice in on these players after already having 4 years of Berhalter. It can't be a great situation to have somebody in charge and control there for 8 years. Even if it's a great situation and he's built up a great culture, and you have to give him credit for that. The players, for the most part, have all bought into this. 8 years is way too long. 4 years is a long time. Players do get comfortable. And unfortunately, players, coaches, everybody's going to have their favorites. And once you get into a situation to where you have your guys, and I'm speaking in terms of as a coach, you have your guys and your players that you just like for some reason. Everybody falls into a pecking order. And everybody can say, oh, well, it comes down to fitness and skill level and how they fit in with, game situations or whatever. And that's with every coach. But to be under that one particular coach for 4 years, that's a long time already. Bringing in a fresh, different perspective, shake things up, make people work for it again, that has to be a better situation than going with somebody for another 4 more years, 8 years total. And I think most of the people within the U.S. Soccer Federation would say, yeah, is it ideal to find somebody that can be in there for 8 years? No. But we're saying that Gregg Berhalter is by far and away the best candidate fit for this job, that he is worth overlooking that as well. He is such a better candidate than everybody else that they've interviewed, that any and all of these shortcomings are worth it for another 4 years. I don't get it. I don't know why you would want the baggage, because he is not that coach. He was a really good coach for us for those 4 years. He got the ball rolling. I think he did a really good job in getting us to where we are. Yes, there were hiccups and puzzling roster decisions, game management decisions, which everybody can pick through with anybody, with any coach. But I don't see how you make a decision as U.S. Soccer Federation that you're telling me he is that far and ahead of everybody else that it's worth it for all of this. And then this should be a special time for U.S. soccer fans going forward, as we have the World Cup coming here to the United States in 3 years. And not to say that you make any decisions based off of what the fans think. Fans are always fickle. Fans are typically, you get into mob type situations. But you're saying that he is by far and away such the better candidate going forward, that you want to be in this fight with your own fans for the next 3.5 years. Yeah. I can't wrap my head around how that happens. We don't know a lot of the situation of the coaching search, what they did. I'm sure over the course of the next year, hopefully somebody can get in there, ask the right questions, do a little research. To me, it just sounds like we didn't do a good enough job in finding other candidates. We go back to him. This is the best candidate for this team for the next 4 years, on top of the 4 we've already given him. And if the perception is, the goal is quarterfinals, semifinals, some people be like, we're going to win. Slow down. But if that is your target, you're saying that Berhalter, from what you've seen and you know of him, is the guy to compete with these other coaches on that level. This makes no sense. I think he's done a good job. I do think he's a good mentor to most of these players, which is an important thing. I said in a video before this that my prediction for the US-Mexico game, which was completely wrong, I picked Mexico 2-0, for the simple fact that the U.S. didn't have a coach. But who would have foresaw that Mexico is worse than we all think, and their situation is worse. Their roster is worse, and they're headed for some dark times there. And the U.S. talent is probably as good as some of us think it is. But I said that, and this was before it was announced that Berhalter was coming back. I can't imagine if you're Berhalter that I do think that he loves these players. He loves this team. He loves what he has done. And this is me saying in that video that I think he doesn't want this job because he knows it's not in the best interest of these players going forward. And that they need a new challenge with a new coach. He needs a new challenge with another team. And let's just say, let's all come to an agreement. Hey, good ride. Hand it off. Everybody's positive about it for the most part. And everybody moves on and watches this team grow. And let's see what happens in the next World Cup. I was like, I don't think Berhalter is that selfish. I think he would be the first one to say, you know what? I've done what I could with these guys. Here you go. Here you go. Good luck. I built a good foundation for you guys. Here you go. And I guess I was completely wrong. And I think this is a sign of a selfish person also. And one that can't let go and is looking out for himself. There's no way, if you sat him down and talked to Berhalter and really had a candid conversation with him, I just don't think that he would come to the conclusion that this is what's best for these players going forward. Another 4 years, 8 years total. There's no way. So there's nothing that we're going to be able to do. He's the coach. He's going to be back. It's going to be official as of today, Sunday, June 16th. Last night, people in the comment sections of all those shows that I was watching, I was up until like 1 o'clock in the morning. Boycott, blackout. No, I'm not following the team now. Okay. That's not going to happen. We all know that's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. And then people start, talking about, well, what if we just give him like a 2-year contract and then we see how he does in the Copa tournament? What is that, next year? I don't even know when it is. And then if the team doesn't perform, then it's like, you're out of here. That's not going to happen either. You remember last World Cup window, the qualifying weeks where you had the 3 games, and every week, well, if we don't beat Panama, if we don't beat Costa Rica, do you think that they'll get rid of Berhalter? Every window when the boys came home for qualifying games, the talk was, okay, well, if they don't do this, if they don't at least win 2, if they don't get X amount of points, is this the week that we make the switch to get rid of Berhalter? Remember that? That was every qualifying week, and it never happened. It didn't matter. No matter how bad they were, away games, no matter the decisions, like, what was it, the Panama game, the major roster changes because I don't even remember at this point. It's not going to happen. He's going to be here he'll be here no matter what going into the World Cup of 2026 if he signs. And they could be, look, we're going to give him a 2-year deal if that's the case. Are they going to get rid of him after the 2 years if the team doesn't perform? Perform in what? Just Copa? There's no games that really count. We're already qualified for the World Cup. So he's going to be given the benefit of the doubt no matter what. It's a law. You're in. If he's in when they announce it today, officially, he is going to be in. And I do think, and I heard this, I forget what show I heard this on, and it kind of makes sense. It is kind of odd that several of the players within the last couple weeks came out in support of Berhalter coming back. I think the players, or at least the core group of players, where it's the leadership council, whatever they call it, I think they knew already. And I think this was part of this plan by US Soccer Federation to start laying the groundwork for this announcement. And I'll end it with this. How do we know it's still messed up within the US Soccer Federation, that we didn't get rid of everybody we need to? It needed to be a cleared house. How do we know that it's still a complete mess? How this all unfolded last night. How do you make the decision? And it was an active decision to release the information, to leak it out prior to the game. Because the guy, I forget his name, from The Athletic, he had all of the information ready to go. CBS had him ready to go. He was there. It was all set up and ready to go to explain the information that he got and announce Berhalter is coming back. The players, the core group, the leadership council, whatever, they all knew prior to this, weeks in advance. And it does make sense. And you're like, you're just reading. Last night was a disaster. You're looking at this from a marketing perspective. What an atrocious, just a Mickey Mouse operation of marketing to announce what you know is not going to be a popular announcement. You announce it prior to one of your biggest games against your biggest rival. Sheepishly throw it out there. And look what happened. Every one of us should have been talking about the game, breaking it down, having a great time. And it was 30% of what the boys did during the game versus Mexico. And 70% talking about this puzzle, the befuddlement of Berhalter coming back. Whose idea was this? It didn't accidentally happen last night. Everything was already in line. The guy from The Athletic was already on location, ready to go with the interview with the Paramount team. It was sloppy. It's run like your local hockey team, your local club hockey team. We'll see going forward. I don't know. Maybe maybe there's hope something else will happen today before the official announcement.